The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome to Visible Learning for English Learners. My name's Andrea Bontempi, and I'm the ESL Specialist for Rutherford County Schools. I've given each of you my business card because they're old and I have to get rid of them. And they say Instructional Facilitator, which is what I was last year and for the past 7 years. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about visible learning for English learners. I need to know what you already know about visible learning. So give me a 5. I could get up there and tell you all about visible learning and have me sit down. 0, you've never heard of it before, it sounds intriguing and you need to be here, and anything in between. Show me now, show of hands. Let's see some 0s, some 3s, 1s. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Our synopsis for today. The session will help ESL teachers use visible learning strategies in the ESL classroom. The concepts of visual learning are multifaceted and can be critical components in the instruction of English learners. Scaffolding, modeling, and the use of strategic routines will be explored today. And you will leave with confidence to incorporate visible learning in your classrooms. How many of you are ESL teachers or involved with ESL? Okay. Everybody? Okay, good. So do I have any administrators? Okay. Special ed, thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
Just the EL coordinator.
EL coordinator, very good, thank you. All right, as I mentioned earlier, this is an interactive session, so we'll start off right away with turn and talk. Now, on your desk, you have a blank piece of paper, which we'll use at the end for your reflection or exit slip, but for now, you can use the back of it. And jot down your thoughts. It'll be a think, pair, share, but turn and talk is fine. What do you know already about visible learning, visible thinking, visible instruction? What makes it visible? Okay, let's bring it back and share out. I hear lots of great conversations. So which group wants to share first? And I won't call on everybody. So if you think you have a really good answer, I had a great question, I'll get to you in a minute. But which group would like to share? There's some good things going on here. Nice and loud.
What I'm thinking is it's when a student can't necessarily write a response. They're more like illustrating their thinking, building models, creating videos and PowerPoints and actually creating something.
Okay, good. Who agrees with that? Does anyone disagree with that? Does anyone say, no, she's way off topic? No, good. Nobody disagrees. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Good. Who has something to add to that? Come on, share out.
We don't know. John Hattie has studied a lot. He looks at studies and has published a couple books talking about strategies that are effective and that we have to be able to measure what we're doing to know if it's impactful or not. So we are wondering if it's about all those strategies that we know have impact.
Well, now I can sit down and you can finish my presentation. That's exactly where we're headed. Yes, we will be talking today about the work of John Hattie, the research he's done. So absolutely. So we're going to take what Regan shared and add to that and elaborate today. Learning must be seen and obvious, not assumed. Think of it this way. With some scaffolding and the intentional use of specific strategies and assessment, You'll be able to identify exactly what part of the teaching process worked, and student learning will be visible. So it's not so much I'm a visual learner as opposed to an auditory learner. Not so much that. That's a piece of it, but that's not where we're headed with the research of John Hattie. That the learning is obvious, that the instruction is intentional. That's where we're going. How many of us create our lesson plans and sometimes we just look at our objectives and we just kind of go with it? How many of us, well, I didn't wait for an answer, sorry. Okay. How many of us intentionally pause and think about all the increments or the steps that we have to take to get to the end goal? How many of us start with the end in mind and work backwards? You don't have to answer all these, but think about it. That's where we're headed today. Students and adults have to know what they're learning, why they're learning it, how they will know when they've learned it, and what it means to have learned it. I'll give you a minute to really let that sink in. Learners must know what they're learning, why they're learning it, how they will know when they have learned it, and what it means to have learned it. You know, we've talked a lot in recent years about the why of teaching something or the why of learning. That to get the students motivated, you make a connection, right? Well, this takes that to the next level and expands it so that every detail of what we teach, the students have a connection with. So that we know that they know they're learning for a purpose. Does that make sense? I know we have our after lunch coma going on here, but does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, I think that makes sense for us. So let's move on. How many of the top 10 factors can you name? Well, you don't know what factors I'm talking about, do you? Or do you? In John Hattie's research, he talks about factors that affect student learning. There are lots. And he has done so much research that he's put them in order. And he's got all the statistical evidence of what is most powerful. Well, there are 10 top ones. On the back of your white piece of paper, please jot down any factors that you think impact student learning. Don't worry about ranking them right now. All right, rather than putting you on the spot, I'm going to go to my next slide so you can see how you did. These are the top 10. Student self-reported grades, Piagetian programs. You know what that is? Think back to your educational, developmental courses and the developmental psychology and approaches. I'm using the wrong terminology, forgive me, of Piaget. But it has to do with the child's development and having your instruction be along the lines supporting the student's development. Response to intervention, teacher credibility, providing formative evaluation, micro-teaching. Micro-teaching means having mini lessons that you kind of intersperse. Classroom discussion, comprehensive interventions for learning disabled students, teacher clarity, and feedback. How many of you had feedback on your list? When I had to do this activity as a participant in a different workshop, I had feedback as my number 1. I was shocked that it was number 10. So all of these factors are there. What if I said to you homework? Do you think that would be on there?
No, it's in the negative.
Okay, you're right. It's not in the positive. The way the scale is that at about 0.40, it has no impact at all, and then it goes into a negative impact. So, do you see this dotted line right here? This is at a 0.41 and a 0.39. for the effect. So cooperative learning is still positive, and integrated curriculum, not so much. And then you start getting into the negatives down here at summer vacation, retention, and then it just got cut off because all the rest are very negative. That they actually have an opposite impact on a student's learning. And according to this one, feedback is way up at the top, and yet it's number 10. So it just depends on which chart you look at. The list that I have here has the top 10, and this just has some of them. You can see that student visible learning, which is what we're here talking about today, is at a 1.44. So when a student knows what they're going to learn, knows why they're learning it, knows if they're learning it, and knows what it means to have learned it, the impact is tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. And feedback is up there too. So visible teaching, visible learning. When teachers see learning through the eyes of the student, and when students see themselves as their own teachers, those are both components of visible learning or visible teaching. Try to wrap your brain around that for a minute. Think of yourself in your classroom, and your student is seeing themselves as their own teacher, and you are seeing what it's like to be a student in that room. It's almost like reversing hats, if you will. And even if it's just for the moment, that aha moment, when you realize, I'm doing all the work here, and the student's not getting it, you're working too hard. We have to make our instruction so that the students have ownership and buy-in and know where they're going and why. So let's go a little deeper. You feel good about that? All right, let's do it. You have to have a growth mindset. How many of you have heard the term growth mindset? Good. Okay. What does that look like for teachers, students, and parents? Let's turn and talk for 30 seconds. What does that look like to have a growth mindset? Turn and talk.
Steps before you can get to
Who would like to share out? And we're all comfortable here. Don't be afraid. What are your thoughts? What did you two talk about?
I was saying, the opposite of growth mindset is a fixed mindset. And so growth mindset, especially, from the perspective of a student, is just being open to the possibility that they can do something new, that they can learn it, that anything's possible. Whereas a fixed mindset is, I can't do it, I'm never going to get this.
Did everybody hear? Good. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Because that was right on. What else?
We didn't get to talk about yet how that would be different from teachers and parents and students, but that's kind of where we were going as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, we may get there. Good. Yeah.
And it's the belief that effort can change my learning, right? That it's not just magically here or not. My effort can impact my learning. And I guess as a teacher, my effort can impact the students having that mindset.
We said too that part of it is that you realize that there's always growth you can make. So you don't say, I made the A, I'm done. You always, the student, the parents, the teachers, whatever, you always have to realize there's more.
Yes. I love that. And that just makes me want to jump into the teacher role. A growth mindset for a teacher is, I was just observed, I got all 5s, yes. But let's reflect. What could I improve on? Never being completely satisfied with where we are. There's always room for growth. What could I do differently next time? So that growth mindset. Or maybe I had a lesson that bombed. Well, that's okay. Don't beat myself up. What can I learn from what happened? What can I do differently next time? Does that make sense? It's healthier all the way around. And it's not just being a Pollyanna, you know, oh, everything's wonderful. It's not just doing that. It's being very realistic and critically looking and reflecting at our practice and our beliefs. And then taking that next good step. Good. On the next slide, I'm going to need all of your help. I have 8 statements. I'm not going to call on you, but you, as a group, are going to just volunteer. One person at a time is going to read out. So just decide, am I a reader or am I not a reader? And without a break, just call out. I'll start. Professor John Hattie from the University of Melbourne believes that there are 8 important mind frames of a visible teacher. Number 1.
To continually evaluate their own performance.
Number 2.
To reflect upon how their actions may affect outcomes for students.
Number 3.
To see themselves as a change agent, changing and enhancing the learning of their students.
Number 4.
To regularly seek feedback about themselves and their teaching.
Number 5.
To use student assessments as a tool for learning about their own teaching.
Number 6.
To constantly challenge the students and limit the use of the phrase, do your best.
Number 7.
To talk less and create a dialogue with the students, ensuring they make up 80% of classroom talk.
Number 8.
To build trust and rapport so that students will ask for help and take risks with their learning.
Thank you so much. So let's talk a minute about that strategy. I saw hands go up and I nodded my head, but I was not having eye contact with you intentionally because I set it up that you as a group of participants, and you think about it, doing it with your students as a class, will just participate and jump in. How did that make you feel? Was it like nerve-wracking? Should I speak? Should I not speak? Definitely different than what we used to with raise your hand and be called on, or just be called on without volunteering, right? So let's talk about that strategy for a moment, and then we'll move on. Was it good? All right, give me a thumbs up. Was it good? Sideways, not really sure, and definitely didn't like it. I see mostly up, a couple of sideways. Okay, I don't see any outright negatives, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I was more familiar with everyone in the classroom, I think it's a great strategy after being familiar with everyone in the classroom.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
That's how I feel.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, honey.
I think too, if it's just reading something, it's not as, intimidating as coming up with an answer. Just reading something, it was.
I think there's less pressure. Like if it was a kid, you don't have a teacher staring at you, like waiting for your answer. It's a little more
just
inviting.
Participating in the reading. Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, where I taught originally, we did Socratic seminary, and so you teach the class the rules of how to have a conversation, and that's more what it was like, really how to participate.
That's exactly right. And Socratic seminar falls right into visible learning. It just lends itself beautifully. If you're not familiar with it, it's not part of this presentation, but go ahead and Google search it or whatever, and Socratic seminar. So, getting back to our slide, which ones of these 8 surprised you? Which ones present a challenge to you? And which comments do you love? You can share out on any of those questions. Which ones surprised you? Which ones are a challenge to you? And which ones do you love?
I love number 3.
Why?
Because it makes them in charge of their learning and with their reflection of their learning.
I love number 8.
Why?
Because I think before a student's going to learn anything from you, you've got to build a relationship with them. If they don't feel that you care about them, they're not going to perform as well as they could.
Absolutely. And I try to model strategies that we use even in sessions such as this. So when you all arrived, you came in early, I was greeting you, trying to remember your name if I met you earlier, or learning your name for the first time, and just having that little conversation so that you see me as part of the group. So that's great. Who else has something to share? Something that surprised you? something that challenges you or something that you love of these 8?
Number 6 surprised me.
Me too.
Because I say, just do your best all the time. I'm like, oh.
How many people agree with Nikisha? How many people agree with Nikisha? Yeah, and you know what? I was kind of surprised when I first saw that too. But here's what the problem is. When we tell them just do your best, and in their mind they're thinking my best isn't good enough. So all of a sudden they have a closed mindset instead of a growth mindset. And just do your best is a way of saying, I'm not really here to support you. I'm not really here to teach you and to give you the tools you need to be successful. Just do your best. It doesn't matter anyway. That's the unspoken message coming across. How many of you have seen that math video, the video of a student, a brand new student in a math class? I'm not going to show it now. I made the mistake of showing it at a presentation in June at the end, and everybody left in tears. I was like, that was not how I intended for everyone to walk out. It just touches your heart. And the gist of it is that the teacher told the student, just do your best. It doesn't matter. And he was brand new. He was using his bilingual dictionary to just get by. And it was a math class. And she told him, it doesn't matter anyway. And he said to her in Spanish, but teacher, it does matter. Yes, it does. And everybody just starts boo-hooing. So, but yeah, so we are there to be that change agent. We're there to make the difference for these students. We have to believe in them, and we can't just say, just do your best. What's something that we could say instead of just do your best? Yeah.
And asking them, do you know what you need to do next? And then, but now that I'm thinking about that, most of the time they say yes. So I think I need to follow up with, what is it that you're going to do next? Yes. I mean, but there's probably something else too.
Okay, but that's a good answer. Yeah, definitely.
I believe in you. I believe you can do it.
Yes. And tell me what you're going to do. What is the next step? You know, even if you already said it 3 times, let's hear it from the student. Let's have the student verbalize what they're going to do next. Absolutely. Good. And I'm sure there are other responses. Before we move on to the next slide, does anyone have anything else to add about this slide? What surprised you, what challenges you, or what do you love?
7's a challenge.
Why?
Because I think it's the nature of what we do to teach and to want to, you know, I came out of a math classroom. I taught math before I went into ESL, and I would have to catch myself, you know, from, you know, working too hard and not making them do enough because I just wanted to show them how to do it. So I have to catch myself to make them do more of the talking.
Absolutely. One of the roles that I have in my position is to go into classrooms and observe teachers and provide feedback. And I can't tell you how many times that I walk into a classroom, whether it's an ESL classroom or a Gen Ed classroom, and the teacher is doing all the talking. And how are the students ever going to really show that they have learned this when after a while they just hear want, 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 you know, Charlie Brown's teacher, want, want, want. That's all they hear after a while. That teacher talk turns into a drone and the students disengage. So we have to plan better. We have to be more strategic in what we do in the classroom with the students so that they can do more of the work. And that we can be there to guide them and to work with them, to instruct them and model for them as needed, but then give them the opportunity to show what they know. All right, we could probably spend a lot more time on this slide alone, but let's move on. All right, I got this walking through the halls at Laverne Primary School, and I saw this, loved it, and I snapped a picture of it with my phone and went about my business. But what I'd like to do is have you read it silently. Take about 20 seconds. Go. And when you have finished, put your hand on your chin like this. Okay, now strategy that I should have used correctly would have been, I want you to read this silently, and when you are finished, put your hand on your chin. It's giving you an instruction, and a signal at the same time instead of breaking it up. But that's fine to do it that way too. So the next thing we're going to do, that tells me that you're ready. The next thing we're going to do is a choral read, because even as adults, you get a new insight. So remember to listen and stay together, but we're going to read through each one of these. Ready? Let's go. I can explain what I am learning and why it is important. I can feel safe making new mistakes. I can ask questions to help me reach my goals. I can reflect on my own work to determine where I am going next. I can evaluate my learning with my peers and with my teacher. I can use grit to get out of the pit. I can stay actively engaged and have fun learning. Very good. Now that we've done it as a choral read, I want to check your reactions. Was it different for you when we read it chorally? Or was it just the same as reading it silently? If it was the same, put your hand on your head. If it was different, touch your ear. Okay, people with your hand on your ear, I want to hear from you. Why was it different?
I don't know, just resounds more in your head. You hear more of it.
Yeah. Why was it different for you?
More emphasis. Yeah.
The same. It's you're hearing it and seeing it, and you're doing something. So.
Good. Okay. Are there any phrases or words in here that you're either not sure of, have not heard before, have not heard used in this way before?
The pit.
The pit. Using grit to get out of the pit. How many of you know what grit is? How many people don't know what grit is? Don't be shy. Yeah, thank you for being honest. That's okay. It's a term that I actually went back into the dictionary to look up. And I grew up in the era of True Grit. It was a song, part of a movie. Anyway, let's not go there, how old I am. But the dictionary definition of grit, number 1, small loose particles of stone or sand. Could that have anything to do with getting out of the pit? No, it sounds like it's in the pit. Number 2, courage and resolve, strength of character. Some synonyms: bravery, backbone, spirit, moral fiber, perseverance, and endurance. Grit. If we teach our students to have grit to get out of the pit, what would the pit be?
Your low
grades.
Your low grade, your, I'm sorry?
Whatever project, task, whatever they're learning about.
The pit is what you're struggling with. Yeah. What you're having a hard time learning or grappling with. Absolutely. So I love this. It was posted on the wall, so when you walk by, you could read it if you hadn't seen it before. And boys and girls get to see it every day. Now, the interesting thing is, this particular school has only 2 grades, kindergarten and 1st grade. That's it. So you have children who really don't know how to read yet. So who do you think this is really there for? Teachers. Yeah, teachers, parents, visitors like me. All right. As visible teachers, we can create visible learning in our classrooms by displaying clear learning intentions and goals, by jointly constructing challenging success criteria, by using a range of learning strategies, by knowing when students are not progressing and assisting them, by providing immediate and relevant feedback, not just good job, and by actively modeling how to be a visible learner, because we're still learning. We learn from our students every day, whether we realize it or not. So a lot of this whole being visible has to do with reflection, self-reflection, modeling that reflective process for the students, displaying clear learning intentions. That would be our objectives that we post. And if we're not posting them, we're sharing them orally. The students have to know where they're going. So as ESL professionals, we have our content objectives and our language objectives. We heard about that this morning in our keynote. Success criteria. I will know that I have learned this when I can do this. So now the students have an idea of where they're going in that lesson. So your exit criteria is their success. You're not allowing anyone to fail. If it looks like they're struggling, you're supporting them, you're scaffolding them so that they can be successful. Are you with me? Are we good? All right, let's move on. So learning intentions need to be transparent and understood by the students so that they're engaged in their learning. And it's best to have learning intentions that link back to the curriculum and use language that is suitable for the age group. The learning intention should be referred to at the start of a lesson so that students understand the goal of the task. You come back to it throughout the lesson, and then finally at the end, you end your lesson a little bit early so that you can have a conversation with the students. So what did we learn today? Let's revisit our success criteria. Were we successful today? Did we meet our goal? So as I said, most of it's planning. Planning your minutes wisely so that you can have all these pieces in there. Once a clear learning intention is understood, you create challenging success criteria. Students will identify what they have to do to achieve the goal, and they can be listed as a checklist. I visited a teacher last year who was new to our district, actually, and I walked in and she had an agenda for each one of her classes, 4th grade, 3rd grade. She had them all posted around the room, and they were in a checklist format. And Monday through Friday and the different activities that they were going to do and the goals that she had for them, the learning intentions were all there. And the students would come in, read those with her during the lesson, and then they say, oh, put a check. And they were telling her, put a check, we just did that. Go ahead, add the check. So the students became so engaged that they wanted to keep her accountable to the checklist. So very fun, very fun. All right, we're going to break things up a little bit. Moving on to something called bathroom briefs. How many of you have heard of bathroom briefs? They're fun. There's a website called Empowering ELLs, and this is just one of the things that he's got on there. He's got a blog which we'll visit again later in the session, but this is something that's very short and sweet and to the point. He's got research and then listening skills, and this is listed as a visible learning example. You listened carefully when you took notes, offered an opinion, sought clarification, rephrased what you heard, asked questions to learn more, etc. These are explicit examples of behaviors that show that you accomplished the goal. So something like this, you would print off his website and hang it up in the restroom so people can read it. So this is not for the kids, this is for the teachers to start having different ways of thinking about their instruction and their learning, to share with their colleagues who are maybe not on board with this. He's got all kinds of topics, and it's always research-based. So I love it. EmpoweringELLs.com. We're going to skip this one for time's sake, but again, if you get my PowerPoint, you can click on both of these live links. One of them is a video scribe that talks all about John Hattie's learning, and the second one is 3 key points, and it's a very nice explanation of things that we've already discussed today. So we're going to move on. This one I will show them. We're going to use a range of learning strategies, knowing how the students are progressing and providing feedback. You'll use multiple intelligences, Bloom's taxonomy, different learning strategies, as well as technology and different classroom materials in order to accomplish this. As the teacher, you need to see yourself as the activator, not the facilitator. So it's important for you to monitor their progress and identify moments when they are getting stuck and not let them fall into the pit, but jump in there and provide just enough scaffolding so that they can feel successful and feel as though they've done it on their own. When scaffolding is implemented seamlessly, the students don't realize that they're being helped. It's very natural. And then you can remove it when they no longer need it. Does that make sense? Okay. Providing students with feedback gives them direction for their learning and helps them move forward. You also want to allow them to have feedback from their teacher, their peers, and themselves. How can they have feedback from themselves?
Self-reflection.
Self-reflection. What if you had an anchor chart of a response on the wall and they took theirs and went up and reflected on that? That's self-reflection. Yeah, great. So feedback should always be positive and rapid. You don't want to delay it. You don't want it to be the next day, because then the learning moment is gone. All right, let's take a look here at students giving feedback to students.
Speaking loudly and clearly, and you use two vocabulary words, and you didn't say closing sentence, so I gave you a 2.
You don't have to. Miss Redmond said that.
But okay, so you gotta feel this. But you were speaking in complete sentences.
I love that. Did you notice how the students were talking to it? The teacher wasn't even there. Nona thought that was so adorable and so authentic that she just started recording it. She got permission, of course. And she shared it with me when she knew I was doing this presentation and said I could use it. So I'm thrilled. It's so authentic to have the students giving each other feedback and not just saying, oh, it was a 2, but saying why. So they're thinking about their learning. They're thinking about what they're producing. All right, let's talk about some phases of the learning process. We have surface learning, deep learning, and then the transfer of learning from surface to deep. Surface learning is the contours and boundaries of a skill or concept. It's the definition or vocabulary, applying, using examples similar to those modeled by the teacher. And it's usually a single strategy. For example, it's just that basic stuff. So the example that I want to give is a student learning how to drive. They have lots of learning, surface learning. They can identify all the instruments and the controls on the car. Should we give them their license? Not really. So that's an example of surface learning. We have to get into the deeper learning. That would be actually getting into the driving, the nuts and bolts, not just the rules. Those are important, but let's go deeper. So deep learning, seeing patterns among concepts and skills, interacting with the content and ideas, noticing what's important and consolidating ideas. The schema, how you're thinking, of the associated knowledge concepts and strategies for maintaining understanding. Let's talk more about that transfer of learning now, going from one stage, surface, to deep. The transfer doesn't just happen. The experiences that a teacher intentionally creates help to foster the transfer. I want to say that again, because a lot of times we teach something and we don't think about, is that surface learning or is it deep learning? A lot of times we just teach it because it's in the curriculum. They have to know it. And we don't even think about transferring the learning from surface to deep. It doesn't just happen. The experiences that we create intentionally help to foster that transfer. So the application of a concept in a new and different way with relatively little guidance from the teacher. There are two types of transfer. There's near and far. Near is an important but not a big leap. For example, a student who learns a rhyme, like ate, A-T-E, can figure out date and late, right? That's important, but it's not a deep transfer of learning. A reader who transfers her knowledge of determining importance to her own original writing is now using what she knows in a completely new way. That's deep learning. That's transfer to deep learning. Does that make sense? Yeah. This is a little theoretical, and I know you want to get past this into how do I do this in my classroom? But this is important to know. It's the foundation of what we do and why that we don't often think about. Transfer doesn't just happen. For example, reading across multiple texts, engaging in debate, Socratic seminar that we mentioned earlier, extended writing tasks, these are all instructional routines that foster transfer, the transfer of learning from surface to deep. Does that make sense? You're using the information that you learned in a new and deeper way. You're making connections with it. You're applying the knowledge. And the important thing to remember is it must be intentional. So what does that look like in the classroom? Well, for surface learning, we want to use prior knowledge to enhance learning. Prior knowledge can help slide a student into the learning instead of creating a barrier. Be careful though, because if they show that they already know something but they don't know it correctly, that can be problematic. You can use anticipation guides to correct that though, and to just get right in there and fix their prior learning. You incorporate vocabulary techniques such as mnemonics, using memory aids, word cards, modeling word solving, word and concept sorts. These are things you can do in the classroom to make this happen. How about putting reading comprehension into context? That's really helpful too, as opposed to just having it out there for them to try to figure out what's going on. In context, just opens up a whole new world. Develop the ability to organize and analyze information. And it helps kids add context to what they're reading as they read. Teaching them strategies like brief summaries, Cornell notes, annotations can help them figure out what works best for their own comprehension of the reading material. Now we're on the deep learning side. Concept maps and graphic organizers scaffold students so that they can organize their information and thinking. Discussion and questioning. Both discussion and questioning create a place to foster deep learning. The more a student struggles with comprehension, the more value there is to asking questions and discussing thinking. Because ultimately we want them to be thinking in a deeper way. Saying things such as, "Can you tell me more about that?" allows students to understand that you expect them to be showing evidence that supports their thinking, instead of saying, "Oh yeah, good job," which we tend to do a lot. Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me why you thought of that? That's really important. And finally, metacognitive strategies. That metacognitive piece, the thinking about our thinking, the thinking about our learning, is so important. The way we watch ourselves learn, teaching students to ask the right questions. A lot of times you tell a student, "Well, tell me what you don't understand." Right? How many of you have done that? No. What don't you understand? I don't know. Well, why not? I just taught you. What don't you understand? right? I see smiles, I hear laughter. I know that you can relate to this. But even maybe with your own kids, you're helping your child with the homework. Now, come on. I know you were in school today. I know they went over this. What don't you understand? How can I help you if I don't know what you understand? Right? Well, the problem is that they are at the point where they don't know what they don't understand. They don't know, they haven't been taught how to ask those questions. So as educators, we need to model asking those questions. And it helps them go from surface learning to deep learning. Very, very powerful. All right, let's talk more about transfer learning in the classroom. This moves students into their owning of their learning. Student ownership of their learning is so important. Applying the knowledge to different situations, students become motivated by their curiosities. And the payback is when they have that aha moment. Oh yeah, this is just like when this happened in such and such a book or in such and such a situation. And the students make the connection that maybe you didn't even think of. But that's the payback when they can do that. So reading across documents, lots of different documents, different genres perhaps, and then synthesizing the information. This activity requires all kinds of learning, the surface, the deep, and the transfer. And if they don't practice it, it won't develop to the point where they can do it independently, which is our goal. It has to be explicitly taught and experienced. So you would model it first, then do it together as a group, then have them do it in pairs and you observe, and then eventually do it on their own and conference with you to see if they're getting it. If not, you go back and provide more scaffolds. Immediate feedback is most important for their success. Let's talk about problem-solving teaching. Instead of issuing a problem and inviting students to solve it, you can share conflicting information, then ask groups to identify what they think the problem is and how best to solve it, supporting their reasons with evidence. Isn't that a great way to go about it? Instead of just saying, well, here's the problem. No, you give them the points. These are the issues. What's the problem? I love that. Extended writing involves the use of knowledge, deep thinking, and transfer of information across disciplines. And then you have conferences with the students when they do their writing so that you actually can have them name what they're doing, help them to set goals to move into a new kind of learning. This was very surfacey. I didn't go very deep. I didn't think very much about it. I just read the facts in my research, and I gave you the facts, but I didn't read multiple sources. I didn't put it all together to go deep with my learning and to come up with my own conclusions. So let's take it there. Does that make sense? Kind of showing you the progression. Now, again, the age of the student makes a difference. I wouldn't have that conversation with a kindergartner. But I know we have all grades in here, so thought I'd mention it. Now, one thing that's really important is timing. Using the right approach at the right time. Using the right instructional routine to match the phase of learning is what makes a difference in their success. So some examples, reciprocal teaching. For example, I'll teach you, you teach me, or you teach each other. In reciprocal teaching, that's very powerful. Students learn powerfully when they can teach someone else what they've learned. But what happens if they haven't mastered it yet? What happens if their learning is significantly flawed and they're really at a much lower level than we think they are? That can be dangerous, and that has to do with timing. So they might not be ready for that yet. Problem-based learning, same thing. So, for example, writing a proposal to curb the rate of deaths among sea turtles, for instance, requires that you know about sea turtles and conservation laws, but also how to research and investigate, how to write a technical proposal, and how to work all these details out. It involves so much more than just, here, write the proposal. You also have to know how to work with goals and deadlines. So there are a lot of other skills needed before they can jump into the problem-based learning. So you want to set them up for success and not jump too far into that until they're ready. Does that make sense? So timing's important. Results suggest that homework, thought I'd throw homework in there since we talked about it earlier. Homework for young children should be about reading with a caring adult or sibling, asking their families interesting questions and so on, not worksheets. But regular doses of homework for older students can build study habits and self-regulatory skills. Again, it's all about the timing. So timing and homework and different levels of assignments are really key. And Nancy Fry and Doug Fisher in Ed Week. That's where that quote is from. So let's talk a moment about direct instruction. A lot of times people say, oh, direct instruction, that's passé. It's really not. It's kind of the foundation of what we do. And these practices should be the bedrock of every classroom every day. And what are these practices? Setting learning intentions and success criteria. Teacher modeling and think-alouds. Guided instruction. Collaborative learning. Independent learning. And closure and reflection. Let's pause for a moment and think. Does my instruction include these components? They might look different from day to day, but does my instruction include these? You don't have to share out on that. But that is food for thought. We don't want to ignore that. Visible thinking in an ESL classroom. Model and practice routines. Have sentence starters, things such as I see, I think, I wonder. Our English learners are not automatically going to come up with this stuff unless we explicitly model for them. So having it posted, having your sentence frames on the wall or on the table, such as in the pictures here, those are important. The students will look there. They'll look at a word wall, they'll look at these sentence frames, they'll go there. Even if you take them down, they'll look in that location where they were, because that's a fabulous scaffold for them. And they need it, especially at the beginning. And even as they develop, level 2, even level 3, you just increase the rigor of it. So explicit teaching, spending more time modeling helps the students significantly. They get to understand these principles of visible learning, taking ownership of their learning. Let's take a couple of minutes to look at more from empowering ELs. This is making reading interactions visible. So I'm not going to read all this, but empowering ELs, it's a little plug for that website. And this is just the top part of it. If you were to print it, it would be a whole, well, a little bit longer. So here's part 2 of it. 3 parts of visible reading. And then the next part, having the micro lesson, collaborative instruction, and debriefing, and then the takeaways. That ELs can learn to read difficult on-grade level texts by learning the habits that close readers employ. Teachers can use a workshop approach to teach close reading skills, and process-based teaching empower ELs to internalize complicated skills. So I highly recommend that website. They have numerous articles. Here's another one, 5 steps to teaching context clues. I'm just going to go very fast right now. Forms of scaffolding, super important. We only mentioned it. How many of you are familiar with the scaffolding that WIDA talks about, the 3 different kinds, sensory, interactive, and graphic? Yes? I see some heads, I see some blank stares. It's like, oh, it's time to go home. Almost. A few minutes left. But the scaffolds, I had a couple of notes on that. So your instructional supports empower ELs to achieve academically and access grade level material. And that is from the WIDA website, quoted from Gottlieb. And they use using a range and variety of instructional support tools enables ELs to engage with grade level objectives and content. And then instructional supports can also be built into assessments to empower ELs to express their understanding and demonstrate their skills. So if they have something abstract that they have to learn, it's difficult enough, right? But learning it in an unfamiliar language makes it impossible, unless it's scaffolded. So scaffolding provides access to the content, facilitates the demonstration of their learning. And I mentioned jigsaw, breaking down a big task into pieces and having everybody be interactive with it. That's a great example of helping to accomplish this. This was found on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's a way to have a self-assessment. Students need to self-assess. We saw some of that this morning also, and even in the video that I showed earlier with the students helping each other, scoring for each other. But self-assessment, you could print this off, create your own, but I know I did this because I did this. And how is your learning going? Here's another one. Student goal setting for themselves, using language and content objectives. As we move into our individual learning plans, ILPs, the state is requiring that of us starting this year. And so teachers are involved in it collaboratively, and students are to have a say in it as well. It's going to look different for kindergartners as opposed to high school students, obviously. And it will definitely look different with newcomers as opposed to students at the advanced level. But the point is that self-reflection and saying, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, it's a big piece of what we're doing. And it's all part of visible learning. So I have 3 slides that have articles that I used in my jigsaw for my 2-hour session. We can't really do anything with these today, plus we're out of time. So I'll just show you that they're in different areas, and they're great articles. All of these links are live, so if you request the PowerPoint, just click on them and you'll have the articles. And we didn't get to do our jigsaw, but time for our takeaways. What are our takeaways today? The impact of an intervention can and should be measured. Whether our intervention is an instructional piece or a remedial intervention, whatever it is, it should be measured. Whether it's new learning, whatever we're doing with the students, we need to measure where they are and where they're going. Progress is not enough. Visible learning argues that practically everything will extend student learning. Students generally make about a year's worth of growth in the course of a year. What we want to do is more than that, especially for our ELs. We can't be satisfied with 1 year of growth because they have so much to do, so much to gain, and so much to learn. The language plus the content. So we have to be a little smarter with how we work. Teachers are paramount. We've got to believe in our kids. We've got to have a growth mindset. We've got to be visible teachers and learners. Most learning stops at the surface level, and we've got to go deeper. Don't just stop at the surface level. And the research on best practices continues to grow. John Hattie is continuing to revise his lists, and he does more and more research. So the books on visible learning are increasing, and we're just getting more and more of them. If we want to ensure students read, write, communicate, and think at high levels, we have to develop positive, trusting relationships with students, all students. And up to 90% of the instruction we conduct can be completed by students using only surface level skills. We need to change that. We need to get them to think more deeply for their own success and their own growth. So for our closure, that was our kind of thinking it through. On the back side of your blank paper is a reflection slip. Name one aha moment you had during the session. What will you do differently? It says next year, but this coming school year. And then any questions you still have. If you would like my PowerPoint, I'm happy to send it to you, so you can add your email address. Thank you for being here today. And if you have any questions or comments, you can share them now or after the session. Thank you.